I am convicted that the Texas abortion law is morally correct, and I will tell you why in a moment. But before I get into that, my friends, I must beseech you all. If you enjoy my message, if you enjoy my channel, please just hit that subscribe button and like this video and comment. It helps me continue to bring good material to you. Let's get into my analysis. So as many of you are already acquainted with, SB 8. Texas recently passed, SB 8, which is perhaps one of the most restrictive post-Roe v. Wade abortion laws on the books in the country right now. The bill, in effect, deputizes civilians to go ahead and bring lawsuits against abortion providers if they perform an abortion, allowing them to come up to $10,000 in damages. Now, of course, the reaction to this was swift, and it was, in many instances, inane, but almost certainly emotional. Many celebrities, such as Cher, the famous singer from the 70s, said that this is an attempt to control a woman's uteruses, and it is therefore unjust. Planned Parenthood went crazy about it and said that women's reproductive health and rights are under attack. Many women in Texas actually began fleeing the state, going to other states to go seek abortions. Uber and Lyft, who are ostensibly ride-share services, actually said that they will be supporting women who may need legal defense help or who may need help in general getting abortions. Lyft gave about $1 million to Planned Parenthood. The CEO of Tripwire, a company which is responsible for the development of a few major video games, he actually was ousted a day after he came out in support of the bill and for the pro-life position. So this is simply a synopsis of the variety of instances that have occurred over the past week or so as of the date of this video that this law has been signed. The Biden Justice Department has also announced that it is going to do its best to undermine the legal roots of this bill the best that it can. My friends, I think that the problem with so many moral issues today and social issues today, such as abortion, is that so many people approach this from the standpoint of approximation ethics. So what is approximation ethics? As I have talked about on this channel numerous times, approximation ethics is simply when you take your moral understanding from emotion and association. So when you associate, for example, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who signed a bill to, in his opinion, protect life, with the Taliban, who overtly try to control them because they see them as lesser, what you're doing is you're conflating two things that are absolutely not related in reality, but ostensibly may seem similar or maybe about similar subjects, i.e. women, and then you're making ethical conclusions from that. So not only is that simply just being a liar and simply just not doing good philosophy, but that's also using emotion as a lens and subjective experience as a lens by which to deduce moral conclusions. And if moral conclusions are to apply universally, and if they are to be stable and not change on a whim, then we must have more than an approximation, or more than a simple whim, or more than a simple emotion by which to justify them. And this is the chief problem of the abortion question. The chief problem of the abortion question is, can we A, deduce that the fetus is actually a life, a living thing, and B, assert that living thing has the fullness of the rights that living thing has, and C, also pair that living thing's life against the bodily autonomy of the woman, and still again come out with the fact that this thing in the body is a living thing. It is a human life. Can we do all of that? And can we do that in a manner that satisfies the three things I just laid out? And it is my submission to you, my friends, that we absolutely can. In these corridors, I will not allow the cultural winds of emotion to take our minds and to take us somewhere that is not logically sane. I will only take us where I believe I can justify with good philosophy and good reason. So allow me to try to do this with good philosophy and good reason. My friends, again, the quintessential question at the core of all of this. Well, first of all, before I get into that, let me just the process. Many people have expressed concerns that civilians who may not even have been affected by the abortion, this is how the argument goes, are able to file lawsuits against abortion providers. And at first, my friends, I shared many of these concerns. I thought to myself, well, if a civilian can just bring forth lawsuits and have standing, artificial standing, as bequeathed upon them by this law, then wouldn't this simply lead to a bunch of arbitrary filings that may have no legal merit to them, even if they had moral merit to them? But then I realized something, my friends. The government is not the government itself, the government proper, prosecutors or whatever, who would normally enforce these kind of laws, are not the only entities that protect rights. If rights, my friends, it follows from the idea that rights flow from the fountain of our being, the fountain of ourselves. And if rights flow from the fountain of our beings and the fountain of ourselves, then it follows that the government is not the only entity by which those rights can be secured and preserved. It is the primary entity, but we also have responsibilities to ourselves and to our rights as well. And it also follows, my friend, that we have responsibilities to make sure that other people's rights, their actual rights, not this sort of false chimera of positive liberty that we give people, no, their actual rights by which they retain are also preserved. And this includes life in the womb, if it is indeed a human life, as I will argue that it is in a moment. So yes, I think the mechanism ostensibly looks scary, but in all reality is simply giving citizens the ability to protect their rights and the rights of the unborn, which I do believe have rights, like at that moment, in a manner that the government would, but in just a morally legitimate manner. So yes, I think the mechanism is absolutely fine if it has parameters, and this mechanism also has parameters around it. Let's get to the fetus. So before we can actually understand that the fetus is alive, we have to understand the nature of its coming into being, the nature of its genesis into this world. So we understand this by looking at the cycles of pregnancy. In the first 1 to 4 weeks of pregnancy, now let's keep in mind, the Texas bill outlaws abortion at 6 weeks. And the argument is that this is unfair because most women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Well, we'll get to that in a second, but keep that in the back of your mind as I'm walking through this. Keep it in the back of your mind. In the first 1 to 4 weeks, a few things happen. Number one, the fetus has a sort of prototypical heart which beats 65 times per minute at the end of 4 weeks. 65 times per minute. Blood cells are developing. The shapes of the head and a lot of its other limbs are also developing. This being, which is an embryo right now, it's not a fetus, by the way. It's a fetus at the end of a certain cycle of weeks, around 5 to 8 weeks. But it's not a fetus right now. It's an embryo. But even this embryo is beginning to exhibit signs of humanity. So let me stop you right here. For the duration of this video, I am defining human life, and this is a definition that is a well-established natural law theory. It's one that I genuinely believe can be proven through reason. I'm defining human life as an entity that possesses the faculties of human life, such as the brain and the capacity to reason, hands, limbs, all kind of sort of chemistry of human life, and an entity that possesses them operationally. So this simply possess them. Corpses possess all of these things, but it has to be operational. You have to have the capacities have to be operational. They have to be able to do something. So for example, if someone is in a comatose state, they still have the capacities for many things. They just cannot access them, but the capacities themselves are still there. They're still animated. So it has to be animated. So those are my two qualities of human life. Faculties of human life and the animation of those faculties. At 4 weeks, we already begin to see the embryo begin to possess a lot of those faculties. Crudely, yes. Primitively, yes, but still possess them. And they are in motion. They're developing in motion because the embryo is still growing and maturing. And by the end of 4 weeks, it may be only like a grain of rice. That's how big it is, but it still has so many of those faculties. Now, we're talking about 6 weeks here. That's when most women don't even know they're pregnant. They can potentially find out. They don't even know, according to many of the apologists. By week 5, and many of the other weeks in that period, week 5, week 6, week 7, the brain, the nervous system, everything like that, which is where the human capacity for rationality and reason rests, are pretty much well formed. That heartbeat can be detected at week 6. At this point, this is essentially goes from an embryo to a fetus, and essentially possesses many of the traits of human life. And again, they're operational. So if my definition is correct, that a human life is that which has the features and the unique physiology of a human being, and those features and physiology are operational, then it would appear to me that the embryo itself may indeed be a form of human life. Again, not a very advanced form of human life. Again, not a very high form of human life. Obviously, it's not Christian Watson, who's 21, sitting here fully developed with everything else. But it possesses so many of the unique faculties of the human being, which make us us, which provide the foundation and the groundwork for harmonious human existence, even if it doesn't exist independent of the womb. And we'll get to that in a moment. So my friends, we already see that this thing is not even a prototype at this point. It possesses so many of the faculties. So let me give you this example. If a car does not have a dashboard or a window or windshield wipers or a hood, but it has an engine, it has chairs, it has wheels, is it still any less of a car just because it doesn't possess some fact, just because it's still under construction? No, it's still a car, because a car doesn't suddenly become less of a car if I rip out its dashboard, rip out its window, and rip out its hood. It's still a car fundamentally, because it still has the components in the nature of it that make it a car. The fetus is still human fundamentally because it has the features in the nature of it that would make it a human. Now, immediately people come back to the idea that it cannot fully be a human if it does not exist independent of some aid. So now I pose you this. Is a comatose person fully a human just because it cannot exist independent of something that's keeping it alive? I would submit that they are, because they possess all the faculties of the human. They have the capacity for those faculties, and those faculties are operational, even if they cannot access them. So they cannot use them, they cannot utilize them, but those capacities still are operational. So again, it doesn't matter if someone is bound to something, especially if the bondage that person is tied to, the bind, has nothing to do with them. And this is an argument the moral philosopher Judith Jarvis Thompson uses in her argument Defense for Abortion. She basically argues that saying that a woman must bear a child is like saying that someone can take a violinist, hook him up to you, and make you bear him. Well, the point is, the violinist had an option to go ahead and take your liberty of choosing. The baby has not taken anything. The baby has simply inherited the situation. The baby has simply inherited a situation. And I'll address Thompson's article in a more broader, different video. I'm trying to deal with the political implications of this right now. But so if the baby had no choice coming into the contents of the womb, then there's absolutely no way you can liken the baby to a tenant that you can evict. That makes absolutely no sense, especially if we've established that they are indeed a human life, just at a very crude level, just not a very fully developed one, but a human life nonetheless. But there are also people that use the phrase, my body, my choice, as a methodology by which to justify abortion. So if we have established that a fetus is indeed a human life, especially a fetus by the time the Texas abortion law covers it, by 6 weeks, is something akin to a human life, or actually is a human life, as I've strongly argued, then we can also understand that since its life, its being, its nature, stands independent of the fact that it's in the womb, because, for example, it would still be a human life outside the womb, then we can also deduce that its value as a human life also stands independent. Are you guys hearing me right now? Its value. See what happens when we think? Its value as a human life also stands independent of the womb. The womb itself is not a vessel by which moral and ethical designations are made. The womb is simply a temporary transport platform by which something beautiful happens, the birth of life. What am I saying? Why am I getting so passionate? Because I have deduced all of this from simple reason, for simple observation, and yet the debate is all about the value of this. Is this a clump of cells? Is it a husk of meat? Does the women matter more than that? All of this stuff detracts from the fact that its value and its destination as a life, those two factors, stand independent of any single individual whim. That is why, my friends, we need to have moral grounding when it comes to abortion. So we've established these things already. Let's also just the argument that since it lives in the woman's body, the woman should therefore have the authority to decide what to do with it. If we've already established it's a human life, then we have also established that that would be not a choice at all. That would be an immoral choice. So, my friends, a lot of this comes down to morality. A moral choice, my friends, is a choice that is made, A, with the volition of the individual, the moral actor doing the choice, and number two, that conforms to the rule of justice. So if a woman decides, with the understanding that the fetus, and even the embryo to a certain extent, is indeed a human life, as I have defined it, and as is reflected by reality, then they must treat that human life with, indeed, the conditions of justice. And justice is simply that which ensures the harmonious existence of the human being. Justice corresponds to qualities that are objective and bound into our very DNA, my friends. Justice is not this sort of arbitrary thing that is given to us. It is not this sort of positive thing that you have to go ahead and give to someone. Justice already belongs to each of us. It simply relies on all of us to preserve its station in this life. That's all it does. And so justice, in preserving its station in this life, fundamentally concerns the nature of rights. Rights are simply, again, the things that are within our being that allow us to live harmoniously, morally, and responsibly, that cannot be negated lest my very life form, lest my very life essence is also negated as well. And so if the fetus is a life, the fetus has rights. And if the fetus has rights, then any choice that is made against those rights is a choice that does not conform to the rules of justice. And if the rules of justice are being violated, we can understand that abortion itself is not a moral choice. It is an immoral aggression, which cancels out any possibility of it being moral whatsoever, regardless of the location of the fetus. Proximity, my friends, is no argument against the value of human life. Proximity, my friends, is no argument for the meaning of human life. And whim is no argument for the treatment of human life. There are things that are objective and established, as I have deduced from reason in this video, that we can argue for, that we can actually see, okay, this is what this means. This is what morality means. This is what ethics means. So, my friends, when I hear this sort of Texas abortion law, and I contemplate over it, I simply see an attempt, a genuine attempt in my opinion, to try to preserve human life, especially when there are signs that that the fetus resembles human life. And in my opinion, there is absolutely nothing more commendable than that. We can argue over process all day. We can argue, okay, is the process of having random civilians being able to have standing in anything they want to as relates to abortion, is that wise? We can argue about that. But fundamentally, the consequence, the pure root of it, is in the protection of what is demonstrably a human life. And if we really want to be moral, if we really want to be just, we're going to go ahead and affirm that. Anyway, my friends, that's my argument. I think that people are absolutely overreacting to this Texas abortion law. We should all be applauding any attempt to ensure that moral and ethical correctness are enforced and ensured. My friends, I love all of you. If you want to support me, patreon.com/officialcwatson, PayPal, officialcwatson@gmail.com, or you can join my logos, christianwatsonlogos.com, or my Discord, which is in the comment section down below. My friends, I love all of you, and please stay pets. Bye, guys.